my own biases, my power, and my positionality, leaning into revolutionary love and committing to ongoing personal transformation, but that alone does not suffice. And in the same way, I have a deep responsibility to contribute to collective transformation. I have a commitment to creating an impact within my own sphere of influence and working collaboratively towards social transformation. And this is really what brought me to the field of education over 20 years ago. And I would say that one of the most informative experiences, as Steve mentioned, was being a founding staff member of Community Roots, this incredible, progressive, and racially and economically integrated K-8 school in Brooklyn, New York, that centers equity and inclusion with an anti-bias approach to education. Both as a teacher there and then as the school's director of community development, my work really entailed learning what it means to build community across lines of difference. The incredible school leaders and teaching staff work tirelessly towards creating an equitable school community. And so Roots Connected was really born out of those practices at Community Roots. And now that school serves as the learning site for this organization. We're a national professional development organization, and we support schools and educators really at our core to focus on ensuring that each child recognizes the humanity in one another. And we believe that anti-bias education can be a tool to make that happen. So I do this hard but rewarding work because I think that every child deserves to be seen in school. I do this work because I cannot be okay with schools being places where kids don't feel like they're honored and they belong. And I do this work because racism and bias eat into the fabric of society. And I believe that anti-bias education and our kids is one place where we can see change. But if I really believe this, then that means that I see all children as living, breathing, incredible humans that have in them all the creative capacities, all the unique treasures and brilliance. And each one of them is perfect, and each one is deserving of living to their fullest potential. And that means, like, as teachers, we're not owners of all the knowledge, but we have this unique responsibility to mine those gems and to make space to know kids and to give space for kids to tell their stories and be full humans in the classroom. When I look back on my own education, or even the schools that many of my friends' kids are currently in, there's like so little space to do this. They're so bombarded with meetings and like meeting standards and raising test scores and completing tasks that true learning is almost lost, right? Like that true mining is lost. And when one considers the heart of racism and bias, in many ways, education has become the way that people are systematically denied that gemmed value. And I would be remiss to talk about education without first talking about it as a system in our society. So these systemic injustices don't allow for us to mine those gems. And as the quote states, we're all members of this society, and all of us suffer from that effects to some degree. And if you think you're feeling the short-term benefits of the system, in the long run, there's a greater harm being done. Now, education, we know, is one of the oldest systems in our society. And obviously, like, I'm not going to go into the history of education, although it is a fascinating one, but it is one of the fundamental ways in which systemic racism is being perpetrated and perpetuated in this country. So to give an example of that, I just wanted to take a look at this image. Carrie, I know that you're really familiar with the 4 eyes of oppression. And for those who are listening and watching in today, I'm sure you've seen this or been thinking about how oppression plays out. But I want to specifically look at sort of how that plays out in schools and what that could look like in schools. It feels important to elucidate on how many of these exist within the context of a school. So let's first look at ideological oppression, right? This is the core ideas developed in an oppressive system that justify various isms, that one group is better and therefore has the right to control another. So it's really sort of like the ideas that are baked into the systems that exist. And so it makes me think about like what we believe about learning. What does learning actually mean? What are the cultural norms and values that are attached to success? What informs our classroom routines and structures? When we walk into a classroom, why is it easy for us to say, oh, it looks like everyone's focused here. It looks like everyone's learning here. But what does that mean, and how much of that is sort of like baked into the system of what we've been created to think is learning? The other is institutional oppression. It's the way that oppression lives in the system and structures of the school, right? So what are the practices that reinforce power dynamics and ultimately a white dominant culture? Think a lot about like decisions about discipline in schools, right? Like in what ways are we creating punitive discipline plans that ultimately are contributing to the school to prison pipeline? Or are we taking a restorative approach? One where the deed and the doer are separated, one where we're actually centering human beings, right? The decisions about curriculum often fall under this institutionalized oppression, whose stories are heard, whose stories are left out.